Hello dear students. Today we shall continue from module 6. In the last section we have seen the different services of kernel. So they were process management, file management, IO subsystem management, device management and device drivers. So in this section we will see one of the kernel service, that is process management. So we'll see in detail regarding process management. The process management function of the operating system kernels are creation to deletion, process structure maintenance, processing resource request, scheduling, inter-process communication. Let me say once again, the process management function of the operating system kernels are creation to deletion, process structure maintenance, processing resource request, scheduling, and finally inter-process communication. So this process management also means that, or also called as task or thread management. So this process management is also termed as task management or thread management. Now we will see the first point, that is creation to deletion. Creation to deletion function enables process creation, activation, running, blocking, resumption, deactivation and deletion. Creation of the process, or in other words we can say that creation of the process means specifying the resources for the process and address space or memory block for the created process, stack, data and heap, and putting the initial information at the process control block. Let me say once again, the creation of a process means specifying the resources for the process, and address space or memory block for the created process or a stack, data and heap, and putting all this initial information at a process control block. So that is exactly the meaning of process creation. Now we will see the procedures in process creation. Now we will see the process creation in detail. At reset of processor, an operating system is initialized first, and then an initial process is created. That means after initializing of an operating system, an initial process is created. So initialization of an operating system means enabling the use of operating system functions. Then after enabling the OS functions, then the operating system is started and runs the initial process. The initial process creates subsequent processes. The initial process creates subsequent processes. The processes can be created hierarchically. So all these things are under the control of process manager. The process manager allocates a PCB, that is process control block, when it creates a process, and later it manages it. So now we'll see what is a PCB. PCB is process control block. So it is a process descriptor used by the process manager. PCB is a process descriptor used by the process manager. So a PCB, if you take a process, we can see a PCB associated with each process. That means a process control block will be associated with each process. Now we will see some of the following parameters that PCB describes. So it has got, the PCB has got a context or describe, or a PCB describe context, process stack, current state, address allocated and presently used, pointer for parent process, pointer to list the daughter process, pointer to a list of resource types usable more than once, pointer to queue of messages, pointer to access, permission, descriptor for sharing a set of resources globally, and finally process ID. So let's move on to the PCB description again. The PCB describes context. What is context? Already we have mentioned what is context and all. So in a context, we can see that there will be a context is associated with a program counter, stack pointer, CPU registers and processor status word. PSW, processor status word or PSW. Then the second point, the PCB description, under PCB description is current state of the process. What is the current state? And the third point, address allocated and the presently used address. What are the address allocated for each task or each process, and the presently used address. Pointer for the parent process, pointing to the parent process. Pointer to list of daughter process, pointer to list of daughter process or child process. So what is a child process? Child process in a process creating, child process is a process created by another process. Child process is nothing but it is a process created by another process called parent process. So this child process can also called as a sub process or a sub task. Child process can also called as a sub process. Now it is PCB pointer to a list of resource types usable more than once. So PCB is pointing to resource types usable more than once. And then PCB pointed to a queue of messages, and it has got, PCB has got or indicates the process ID. PCB indicates a process ID. So each process will have an ID, unique ID. So these are the things associated with a PCB. So PCB is nothing but process control block. Second process management function is process structure maintenance. This enables process structure maintenance and its information at the process control block. The third process management function is processing resource request. So processing resource request by process made either by system calls or by sending the messages. So processing resource request is by system calls or by sending the messages. The fourth point, it is scheduling. The scheduling can be done in many ways, that is cycle scheduling or priority scheduling for process scheduling. Now the next point is inter-process communication. So it is used for process synchronizing. So this inter-process communication is used for process synchronizing. An operating system effectively manages shared resources using IPC mechanism. That we have already seen how an IPC mechanism synchronizes a shared resources. Now we will see another concept, that is process manager. We have seen so many things, so many functions carried by a process management. So all these things are under the control of a process manager. So process manager manages the created process. Or I can say, in other words, I can say that it is a unit of the operating system, that is the entity responsible for controlling the process execution. So process manager is an entity responsible for controlling the process execution. Now we'll refresh the functionalities or the facilities of the process manager. So all these things we have seen in the previous slides, but still once again we just recollect the functions or the facilities carried by the process manager. Helps process to sequentially execute or block when needing a resource. Second point, implements link to resource manager. Implements link to the resource manager. And the third point, for resource sharing. For resource sharing. The fifth point, allocates resources. So allocation of the resources based on the allocation mechanism. Last point, manages the resources and the processes of the system. So these are the facilities of a process manager. So that's all regarding the process management. Thank you. In the next slide, we will see the next kernel service, that is file management.